Good morning, everyone. My name is Brendan McEvely. I work for Words Ireland, and you're very welcome to the Arts Council presentation on the English Language Literature Bursary. So you'll get all the information you need from Sarah Bannon this morning, and her team, Aoife Moynihan, is on too. And I guess this one is particularly important because there's some big changes, I guess, to the Literature Bursary this year, which in a way affect the Agility Award. So tune in, and if you kind of have to dash off, or if there's child interruptions or whatever interruptions, this is being recorded, just to say as well, and that recording will go onto the Words Ireland YouTube channel. And this is also being shown on Words Ireland YouTube channel live. So that is the crack, I guess. Just to say, I'm sure Sarah will mention that the deadlines for both the Agility Award and the Literature Bursary Award are the 3rd of February. So plenty of time, and I think both applications now are not too demanding really for the benefits that accrue. So over to you, Sarah.
Great, thanks very much, Brendan, and it's great to see so many people here. I am going to share my screen in a second and give you a PowerPoint presentation. So let me just bear with me. Oh, Aoife, as host, you need to allow me to share my screen. Sorry.
You should be able to now, Sarah.
Okay, perfect. I can. Thank you very much. Okay, guys. Let me just begin to play, start from the beginning. Okay, so thanks very much for everybody for coming. I think that this is 44 slides, but don't be scared. I don't think it'll take me nearly as long as one might imagine to get through 44 slides. I tried to keep them kind of visual. And everything in this presentation is actually published on our guidelines. There is like no extra information except for, I suppose, my delivery, and any kind of clarification, or if any language is confusing to you, hopefully I can help elucidate that for you. But yeah, everything is in the guidelines, so you can always refer back to the documentation. But really, the purpose of sessions like these is to just humanize as far as possible what this process is, and just to again emphasize what our priorities are, and to try to make it a little bit easier for you, the applicant, because of course we are here to support you as artists. So 3 important points before we begin. We've not begun. The first is that we provide access reports. So if you have a disability, we do our best sorry, let me just move this so you can see it, to support you in making your application and accessing our online services. We have an access officer, so we can provide one-to-one supports, but we do need some notice for that. So if you're coming to the session today and you think that you need access supports, you can get in touch with ourselves, myself or Aoife, or directly with our access officer, and she will support you. And there's more information about this in the guidelines as well. Secondly, I'm just going to keep my eye on the chat. Oh yeah, great. Secondly, new applicants, we are really aware that barriers still exist for many artists in Ireland, and so we want this to change. We have an equality, human rights, and diversity policy. So we particularly welcome applicants who haven't applied to us before, who represent the diversity of Irish society. And we encourage applications from all areas of the community, regardless of your gender, sexual orientation, civil or family status, religion, age, disability, race, or membership of the traveller community, or your socioeconomic background. And as I say, we have a broader equality, human rights, and diversity policy and strategy that you can take a look at. And then thirdly, sorry, we also have the Agility Award. So as Brendan mentioned at the beginning, we have another award called the Agility Award. It was only introduced last year, actually maybe it was the very end of 2020. But that is open to writers and illustrators at all stages of their career. And for the time being, for people who've been around the block for a while, you will know that previously the Literature Bursary had an emerging writer strand that was originally offered at €3,000, then went up to €4,000, and then was really replaced by the €5,000 band. And that was for writers who didn't have a substantial publishing track record. And then we introduced this new Agility Award. There was a lot of overlap. So to make things a little bit easier, we have focused the Literature Bursary on those more established writers who have a publishing track record, a substantial publishing track record. I'll talk more about that later. And the Agility Award is open to writers at all stages of their career, but we are particularly interested in emerging writers. We'll talk more about it in a second. That is the biggest change, I suppose, that we're highlighting today. So I'm just going to talk you through a little bit the guidelines for the applicants. That's you. So just to remind you, and that's me with my megaphone saying that the closing date is Thursday, the 3rd of February, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. And we have an online system, which means we can accept applications right up until then. And 5:31 is actually late and won't be accepted. 5:32 is the same as 5:31, next day. So if I were you, and this is what I tell people, I would almost pretend like the closing date is an hour earlier or even the previous day, just to give yourself plenty of time so that you don't end up at the last minute with technical problems or a slow internet server or any kind of issue. Because they're online, we can see when people upload their applications. And in general, most people, like 90% of our applications, come in on the last day, and even higher percentage like within the last hour. So I am saying to you, smart people who have signed up for this clinic, don't be those people. Be someone who is like relaxed and unstressed, and pretend like the closing date is Wednesday, the 2nd of February, and get your application in a bit earlier, and then you won't be stressed. So the objectives of the award are to provide mid-career and established writers and picture book illustrators with time to think, research, reflect, create, and write. In the main, what this award allows people to do is to concentrate on their writing or their illustration projects for a period of time, and it's usually by releasing you from your financial commitment. So maybe you take on a lot of freelance work and you want to do less of that. Maybe you have caring responsibilities and you want to pay someone to do that. Maybe you want to reduce your hours, whatever. This is to give you time to work on your writing practice. So we have a definition of what literary writing is. Within the guidelines. I presume that most people are pretty familiar with this now, but we define literature in the Arts Council as fiction, poetry, creative nonfiction, graphic novels, children's fiction and poetry, illustrated picture books, literary criticism, and contemporary literary biography and autobiography. So that's excluding things like, and forgive me if you think this is really obvious, but it comes up like, we don't support cookery or academic texts or self-help, or so this is the wheelhouse of the Arts Council within the bursary. So, and then just to get on to this change that we've made, and I suppose for those who, again, who've been around for a while, you'll be a little bit familiar with this already. And this is how we define emerging ourselves. I know all these terms are very fluid, and this is the working definition that we just need to make functional. So we have defined mid-career and established as in a particular way, and that is those writers and illustrators that have a demonstrable publishing track record, and that means you have published at least one full collection, novel, or picture book with an independent recognized publisher. So you may have published a story in a journal or several stories in a journal, several poems. If that is the case, you would still be considered, according to this definition, an emerging writer, and we would direct you to the Agility Award. If you have published a full collection, if you have published a novel, we are defining you as mid-career, established, however you psychologically might feel, and you would be eligible to apply for both the bursary and the Agility Award. But the bursary is probably what you are looking at. Sorry. So, why mid-career and established? I thought the Arts Council supported writers and illustrators at every stage of their career. Don't worry, we do. If you're emerging, you should consider applying for the Agility Award. This is about focusing our awards and making each one distinct. So last year and in 2020, in response to the pandemic, we introduced a whole bunch of new supports for artists and arts organizations, and we acted really quickly, and we got a lot of money out to a lot of artists working in all different kinds of areas. But we also got a lot of duplicate applications from applicants. The purposes of our awards really overlapped with one another. So we were creating a lot of extra work for you, the artists, but we were also creating a lot of extra work and slowness in ourselves. So this is just about distinguishing what each of the awards are for. So who can apply for the bursary? So I've kind of gone through that. You're going to be doing your literary writing, and you have to be a professional practicing artist. This is kind of covered by the other definition anyway. This is in the guidelines too. And we say that we know that you may not earn income continuously or exclusively from your arts practice, and this is almost always the case. But applicants must identify themselves and be recognized as their peers as professional practicing artists. You have to be resident in the Republic of Ireland. There are some exceptions, and if you're an exception to that, if you're not resident in the Republic of Ireland and you wish to apply for this award and you think that you are eligible, you need to get on to us directly and talk to us about that. We have a test that we follow there, but in general, it's those who are resident in the Republic. And then, as I said, you have to be a mid-career or established writer according to our own definition to apply. And so who can't apply? You can't apply if you're currently in undergraduate education. We can't, individuals seeking support towards the fees of postgraduate higher education studies. So you could be pursuing postgraduate study at the moment, but you can't apply for the fees to do that. If you can't apply to seek support towards work undertaken as a part of a formal course of study. As I said before, if you don't have a demonstrable publishing track record, i.e. one full collection, novel or picture book with an independent recognized publisher, you can't apply. If you're a member of Aistana and receives the canoeist, you cannot apply. And then if you wanted to undertake an internship with an organization, we would not support the costs of that. So you can only apply for one of these awards in an arts area in 2022. Bursary Round 1, Bursary Round 2, Next Generation, or Markovich. Okay, so you have to choose from within that suite which one you want to apply for. I'm not going to hugely get into Next Generation and Markovich today, but Next Generation is a targeted award that we have that covers all art forms, and it's for artists who are at a pivotal stage in their career. It is a larger bursary at 25,000, and it enables, there's also a residential aspect to that award where all the recipients spend a week at the Tyrone Guthrie Centre. And that has closing date later in the year. And then just to complicate matters further, you can't apply to both the bursary and the agility in this first round. They have the same closing date. So you're being asked to make a choice here among these awards. I will say, to confuse you further, but hopefully to clarify things further, if you're an emerging writer and you wish to apply for an agility award, you could certainly apply for an agility award in round 1 or 2, and you would actually be eligible to apply for a Next Generation award or Markovich award as well. So the agility allows you to apply for a few other things as well, whereas the bursary, the Markovich, Next Generation, you need to choose between those. Okay, so getting back to what the purpose of the award is, it's to enable mid-career and established writers and picture book illustrators to do the following: to think, research, reflect, and to write. By and large, like what people are applying for is to concentrate on their work for a period of time. And that's usually by releasing them from their financial commitments, because usually what writers and illustrators need is they need time and they need space. So you'll be applying for a certain amount of money, and you should apply based on the scale of your proposal and the amount of time that you want to devote to it. And you can apply for one of these 3 amounts, right? So we put these at set amounts, and this is really to kind of take the guesswork out of this for applicants. Previously, applicants could apply for any amount up to, it used to be 15,000. And we often receive very detailed information from people about their financial history, or their, what their mortgage repayments are, or what their rent is, or what their childcare costs are. And really that's not what this is about. This is about the time and scale of your proposal and what you want to do. So you as an artist, we as an arts council are putting trust in you as an artist to identify the amount of money that you need, do you think, to work on this proposal and to develop it. So that can be 10,000 euro, that can be 15,000 euro, that can be 20,000 euro. And you should just apply for one of these amounts of money, not 9,500, not 15,100, not 20,800. You have 3 choices of how much you can apply for. There are 10, 15, and 20,000. So you choose one of those. We're working on an upgrade to our online application system at the moment. My hope is that eventually you will only be able to choose these amounts at the moment. The onus is on you, the applicant, to write in one of these amounts, but it's one of those 3 amounts that you would be applying for. So the emphasis in this award is on buying time. So the concept is that you are taking time out for yourself and allowing yourself the freedom to concentrate on your creative practice. So the amount that you request should include the amount you'll pay yourself for the time you're going to develop your practice. And that could be 100% of the award. And I will tell you from my experience in the Arts Council with the Literature Bursary, and this is over 10 years of experience, by and large, the vast majority of applicants and those who are successful for the bursary are looking for 100% of their time. You know, that is what they're looking for. It is my time, 10,000 euro or 20,000 euro, and that's what they're applying for, not for something else. But it can also cover costs that are intrinsic to your time, like, you know, maybe you wanted to engage a mentor, so it could be a fee to them, or it could be some materials, and we say that that's up to a maximum of 15% of the total amount requested. And the reason that we're doing that is we really want artists to put a value on their own time. So please, and this is my entreaty to you, please apply for 10,000, 15,000, or 20,000 euro, just one of those amounts. If you apply for more than the maximum or less than the minimum, your application is actually deemed ineligible. So I know that seems very harsh, so that's why I'm just emphasizing it so much. So you need to apply for one of those three amounts. In addition, if you request an amount other than one of these bands, i.e. if you request 19,500, the maximum that we would be able to offer you would be 15,000 because we go to the lower band. Within our governance, we can't award applicants more than they've actually applied for. It always has to be the same or less. And by and large, the reason we've set these amounts is that we really want people to value their time. And when people apply for a particular amount, 10, 15, or 20, we want to meet that, and we don't shave money off arbitrarily. So I mentioned at the very beginning, in addition to the maximum amount permitted, the Arts Council will also consider access costs. So this is a special exception, specifically relating to making of work by artists with disabilities. So if you wish to apply for access costs, you should provide a short document outlining what your additional access costs are and an amount for the access costs in the expenditure section of the application form and budget. And that figure should also be included in the total amount of your request. Your request, sorry, there's a mistake in my PowerPoint. So this is just going to explain what access costs are, but access costs for artists with disabilities cover any requirement you may have in order to remove barriers that might stop you from completing your proposal. So it might include costs towards additional time needed to complete an element of proposal or assistance that you might need. And then we have a definition of, the definition that we use for a person with disability is from the UN Convention of Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And that is persons with disabilities, including those who have long-term physical, mental, intellectual, or sensory impairments, which in interaction with various barriers may hinder their full and effective participation in society on an equal basis with others. So again, I think as I said at the beginning, if you have access requirements, I would really suggest getting in touch with us and letting us know about them so we can kind of guide you through the application process. This won't apply to everyone, but certainly for those who it does, please get in touch. So now, one of my favorite, what you can't apply for. I think these are fairly obvious. I mean, as I said before, you're going to be applying for your time. You're going to be applying for, for your time as an artist, but you can't apply for things that don't fit the purpose of the award, things that are better suited to another award funded by the Arts Council or are operated by like another state agency like Culture Ireland. So if you wanted to go abroad and read your work at a festival, that would be an award for Culture Ireland. Something that has already taken place, so a collection that you have actually already completed, you can't apply for retrospectively for something you've done. Now, I will say people often ask us, but of course I've started my project and you're looking for a work in progress. And of course we recognize that like there's a fluidity to creative practice and to what you're doing. So of course we believe that you will have begun the writing projects that you're applying for. But the idea would be that it is not completed. That's why you need the funding. So things that have already been assessed by the Arts Council, unless you've demonstrated that you've moved the proposal since you're applying. So we get this question a lot from people saying, well, I got funding for this, my third novel, but it's taken me a lot longer. Can I apply again for that? Absolutely you can. We recognize that those projects take quite a long time, but we would recommend putting in a different sample of work and explaining how the project or your writing project has moved on and why you need support now. So just the idea is kind of that we wouldn't be assessing the exact charity or fundraising purposes, that's clear. The cost of self-publishing. So if you are a self-published author, of course, you are eligible to apply for our awards. But if you're applying for the cost of self-publishing, we can't cover that cost, or that wouldn't be eligible. And then, as I mentioned before, activities that don't fall within our definition of literature, applications for large-scale capital costs. I don't think this has ever come up, but that's not what it's for. So that's what you can't apply for. So I've gone through like what it's for and what you'd be and why you'd be applying. So then there's the how of applying. And I will say there's a technical video that's on our website about making an online application, the technical elements of it that you can take a look at. It's not particularly, I don't think it's particularly difficult, but there are a lot of resources available on our website. This is more about the criteria and the objectives and the priorities. Anyway, so you go onto our website. I presume that all of you have already looked at the guidelines and you've downloaded the application form. But in addition to the application form, which is going to tell you all about, you're going to tell us all about your project or your proposal and what you want to do in your writing and who you are as an artist. You're also going to give us a couple other pieces of information. Again, this is all in the guidelines. You give us your application form, then you'll be giving us a one-page synopsis or summary of the writing proposal or the writing project or illustration project. And then you'll be giving us a work in progress. And there are different guidelines for what those should be based on whether you're an illustrator, a poet, or a prose writer. And then your CV, and that's your artist CV. I'll talk a little bit more about these because these are really important. So your CV, that's going to be highlighting your achievements as a professional artist. That should be a maximum of 3 pages. And again, it's about your career as an artist. And I would, I've been across these awards for a very long time, and the supporting material that is supplied with the application is looked at in great detail by both the initial assessors, and I'll talk about the process for that later, but also by the peer panel. And they often talk about how important it is to have the context for the artist and what they've achieved and have the CV. But it's a maximum of 3 pages. So that's just a kind of, that's saying I didn't have time to write you a short letter, so I wrote you a long letter. So it's just to kind of be focused as well in your achievements too and be selective. Secondly, you're going to have a 1-page draft synopsis or a summary that contextualizes the sample pages or images for those who are assessing your application. So this is just about you trying to present your best case to the panel and to the assessors. And so if you're looking at 10 poems, this is kind of this is setting the scene for what those are. If you're looking at a chapter of a novel, this is what the novel is, and this is where you are in the story. Maybe it's the beginning, maybe it's the middle. And if it's an illustration project, you might tell us, where you are in that. So that's really important. So those 2 things. And then finally, your work in progress. And this is a really essential part of your assessment. It can't have been previously published, okay? So it's not something that's been, so even if you're a poet and you're working on a collection and a number of the poems have, that you want to put in your collection have been published in various journals, you wouldn't submit those. You could submit additionality, but they wouldn't be your work in progress. They would be pieces that haven't been published yet. So for prose, we're looking for 4,000 words of the work in progress, and it's related to what you've outlined in your proposal. So if you've told us in your proposal you're working on a short story collection, but then you give us a sample of a fantasy novel that you're working on, the 2 things need to match. I know this is obvious, but still. And we do recommend that it's in 12-point font and double space, and that's just to kind of make it easier for the assessors. For poetry, we ask for 10 pages of poetry, and that to be single spaced with no more than 1 poem per page. We don't want 12 tiny poems on 1 page, 1 poem per page. And then for illustrators, 10 good quality images or pages that relate specifically to your bursary proposal. And then you can also include 5 images that demonstrate your practice to date. And then if you have a dummy book available, please submit that as well. So after you've made your application, you're going to get 2 emails. One is an acknowledgement, and one is your application number. Then we do an eligibility check, and then it's on for assessment. Before I move on to the next slide, I'm going to answer a couple of questions that have come out of the chat, actually. So Pat Cotter, you've asked, do bursaries for illustration come out of the literature budget or the visual arts budget? They come out of the literature budget. There was a decision made back in 2010 when we adopted the children's literature policy in the Arts Council, that picture book illustration would fall within the remit of literature, because to date those were picture book illustrators were falling between two stools, and I suppose we felt like it had a closer home within literature. Lynn Buckle, you asked about access costs. Access costs have to come out of what we apply, which is to buy our time. If we're successful, we get less time because we also have access costs. No, Lynn, it's the only case in which the Arts Council will award more than the 20,000 or more than one of those bands in the case of access costs. So we would be offering, so if you were an artist who needed 20,000 euro for your time, but you needed 5,000 euro in terms of access costs, you could be awarded 25,000 euro. That's the only case where that would happen. But we just recommend getting onto us so we can kind of guide you through that as well. And then Oisin, that's why I wanted to pick this up. How strict is the one-page rule for the synopsis? It's not strict. I mean, if you're a page and a half, I think that's fine. Better to have it than not have it, but I think if you could try to have it into a page, that is really what we're looking for. And it's just to think about the readers. So we usually receive around 200 applications. So it's just to kind of think about the assessors and try to condense it there. And then Roisin asked if there's a limit to how often people can apply. If you received funding 2 years ago, can you apply again? Now, there's no limit, and actually with each panel and with each award, we look at those fresh. There was a time, I suppose, maybe after the last financial crash, in which we did try to pull back and try to create more opportunities for people by putting some limits on, people often had to take a breather. I think if you receive a Next Generation Award, that's 25,000 euro, you do have to take a 1-year break before you can apply for funding. But I think that's the only case at the moment. Aoife might correct me if I'm wrong, but at the moment, no. But the key thing is not to be applying for exactly the same thing twice. And then Lauren, just on the supporting material, you wanted to know what materials would you like to see from those who are making a proposal for an author illustrated work. I think in that case, Lauren, it would be better to put in both the images and the writing sample, just to do both. Pauline, you've asked if you're writing historical fiction and your work in progress as research notes, am I to assume you have to wait until you've reached the creative stage? I suppose, Pauline, you could put in your notes or where you are with it, and then you could put in another unpublished sample if that's where you are. In general, people have some of their creative work ready to show when they're applying for a bursary, but we could maybe talk about that offline if you wanted to drop me an email and we can talk about the specifics of that. But in general, people have some sample of what they're doing. I will say sometimes people will say, look, this is my process. I have 4 novels under my belt and this is a work in progress. And when I say it's a work in progress, it's really a work in progress and it's going to look really different. And I've been on panels where that is seen favorably by a panel. So I think it's just about putting the pages into a context. And Lauren, you've asked published books if screenplays would be considered an assessment for eligibility. No, because I suppose a screenplay isn't a novel. We're not supporting screenplays within literature, so it would kind of be it wouldn't have the kind of the same relevance to this particular award, so it would need to be within the field. The contract record needs to be shown in the field that you're applying. Okay, so I think I've scooped up the questions that we have so far, so I will scooch now. Keep a check on time. I'm sorry I'm talking so much. But anyway, so after you apply, let me move these questions out. After you apply, you're going to get 2 emails. One is an acknowledgement and one contains your application number. Then internally, we do an eligibility check. And this is our least favorite part of the process, I will tell you, because this is where, unfortunately, sometimes we have to whittle people out because they have made a mistake that we've probably covered here, where maybe they didn't put in their CV, maybe they didn't put in the 1-page the 1-page summary, or they didn't put in a work in progress, or they applied for more than they were meant to apply for and it wasn't an access cost. And then we have to make those applicants ineligible. And that's very frustrating for the applicant. So that's when we do that eligibility check. And then once everything is deemed eligible, they go on for assessment. So the assessment process is first done by, is shortlisted by the Arts Council's literature advisor, who often subcontracts with writers and other genres as well, to cover off. As I say, we usually receive between 100 and 200 literature bursary applications per round. The numbers went up a good deal last year, despite having more awards. So I'm not sure where we'll be this year. Prior to the pandemic, I suppose we would receive often between 60 and 100 applications per round, but they were kind of up and around the 200 mark in both rounds last year. So, so Declan Hughes is literature advisor, and then as I say, he often works with a poet or a children's writer as well to look through all the applications, and they do a shortlisting process. And the applications are shortlisted based on the criteria, which I'll get to in a second, and are in the guidelines too. They do a shortlist, and those that are considered the strongest, there isn't a scoring process for this, it is a narrative assessment. But those that are felt to be the strongest go through to the peer panel, and I'll talk a bit about that. And then the decisions are noted by the Arts Council. So the criteria, just to remind you, are artistic merit, how the application meets the objective and priorities of the award, and feasibility. Within the bursary, I will say that artistic merit is the kind of the criterion that does the artistic quality, actually, I think is how it's termed now. But that's a criterion that does the most work. And that is, so there's a narrative assessment of the application based on both your track record as a writer or illustrator, but then also the work in progress in the summary that you've put before us. So I always emphasize to the shortlisters, to the applicants, and then to the peer panel that this is the work in progress is really important from the Arts Council's perspective, because it allows us to, in some ways, have an even playing field for people and to see people's kind of work in a kind of an even-handed way. But at the same time, it also is not a 10-page writing competition. It is we are looking at a person and investing resources into a person who has a track record and who has done things in the past. So we're looking at all of that in the round. The next criteria is how you meet the objectives and priorities of the award. Most applications usually receive that, because usually people are quite straightforwardly just looking for time. And then feasibility, and sometimes this is a little bit of a question, although it will be kind of covered off in artistic quality as well. And that's whether or not, it feels like, is this too ambitious? What you're trying to achieve? Will you actually pull it off if you're kind of moving genres to get you proven that you can do it? So yeah, but in the main, it's the artistic quality. So I'm going to go just back a little bit just to talk about the shortlistings and the peer panel. So the peer panels, so the shortlisting is the first piece that's done. And there aren't hard and fast rules on this, but often between a third and a half of applications are shortlisted based on kind of numbers and the budget that we have available. And then the shortlisted applications go to the peer panel. And because everything's online, we're able to assign all the information. So the panel will receive all the material that you have uploaded, and they will also receive the comments from the shortlisters, and there's a narrative against each of those criteria. The peer panel is made up from, we have a long list on the Arts Council's website of those artists who have who've agreed to be included on the Arts Council's peer panel. They are practicing artists across all disciplines, but in literature it's comprised of novelists, short story writers, poets, editors, critics, and we try every panel, and I can even see there are a few people on this call who've been on panels before, but we try as far as possible to have we don't just try, we do have a cross-section of expertise and on each panel. So we always try to have a fiction writer, a prose fiction writer, we always try to have a poet, we try to have a children's writer and someone who covers illustration, and then we usually try to have someone who maybe has kind of a editing experience or that kind of crossover from. So it's usually 4 people on the panel, And by and large, we also try to have an international person on the panel as well. It's really important to have the expertise of people who know the field here in Ireland, but it's also really helpful to have a fresh eye for someone who's not as familiar with the scene here in Ireland, which is very lively and very busy, but by definition is small. So we try to do that. The panel changes every time. We try to have a big gap between, or relative gap between people being called back in, so we don't have the same panel every time. So if you've applied to the Arts Council before and you've been unsuccessful, I will say that the thing that should give you some hope is the fact that we try to freshen the expertise in each round, and to try to bring a different set of eyes to things. And yourselves as practiced professionals that there's a certain amount of objectivity that can be brought to bear on creative work, and then there's also, of course, subjectivity too. And so that's why we try to have different eyes and different voices. And then the peer panel is the one they make the decision based on the applications. The way the panels work, they used to be done in person. They now are done in this kind of virtual world. But we go through each application one by one. It's chaired by a member of the Arts Council. They discuss each application in turn against the criteria. So what they think of the artistic quality, what they think of how it meets the objectives. They discuss each one. Then at the end of the meeting, we go through a scoring process. There are 4 scores. A is must fund, B is should fund, C is could fund, and D is not a priority for this award. Each of those letters has a number. Everything goes up in a big Excel sheet, and there you get a numerical score. And those that score the highest, we award funding until the money in the budget actually runs out. So that's how it works. It's so there's a few more things I want to say about that, but that's how the process itself actually works. And again, this is outlined in the guidelines, the materials, so taking you through the criteria already. So we issue our decisions within 12 to 16 weeks. It used to be kind of closer to 12. It's now we're closer to 16 because we're receiving so many more applications than we did before. It is extremely competitive. We always say no to more people than we say yes to, and that is just down to the level of funding that we have available from government. We would tell you this in your notification. If you receive an award or if you don't receive an award, you should ask for your assessment. You should take a look at it, and then if you receive funding from the Arts Council, you can draw it down in 2 installments, and then the final installment is dependent on you submitting a report form to us, which just tells us what you think of the award and what you got done and that. But we don't expect you to give us a copy of your published book when you're done, or it's not kind of outcome based. It is really about your time. So as I say, after your decision, everything is assessed in a competitive context. So there's the merits of your application on its own, but then it's in the context of the 200 other applications in the field. And so while an application might be extremely good, it might not be as extremely good as some of the others. And so we always receive far more worthy applications and we're in a position to support. So I would encourage people to ask for your assessment and not to get discouraged, just because this is, working in the arts is a long road. There's unfortunately that kind of rejection is part and parcel of part of that. But I just that the Arts Council is a little bit different than maybe submitting your work to a publisher or an agent. They probably don't want to hear from you again, but we do, and so we're here to we're here to answer your questions, and we're here to receive an application from you again. And really the only people who know you've applied multiple times are usually like myself and Aoife, and the rest of the people on the team. The panel are all new in the panel, so I wouldn't be discouraged in that way. Someone on one of these calls once told me that she fills out her application every year to the Arts Council the same way she does her taxes, in a kind of she tries to do it in a non-emotional kind of way. So common mistakes, I think I said this at the beginning: missing the deadline, leaving it too late, not uploading supporting material, so just forgetting entirely to put any of the supporting material up, uploading the wrong supporting material, so putting up like a curry recipe instead of your CV, or just not reading the guidelines and not really understanding what we're here. But I just know, because all of you have come to this session today, that you will be well able for it. So then finally, we recommend you upload your application, this is my thing, 48 hours before the advertised deadline. That way, if you get a problem, you'll have time to contact us so that we can assist you in resolving it. And then because we have so many applications and because so many submit on the very last day, if you get a technical issue after 2 p.m. on the day of the deadline, that's 3.5 hours away from it, we might not be able to resolve it and we can't be responsible for that. So maybe use my rule of thumb, but even use 48 hours and pretend like the closing date is actually on Tuesday rather than Thursday. So that way, if you encounter any problems, you have loads of time. So I mentioned at the beginning that if you have technical questions, we have an FAQ section on online services, and they have their own email address as well where you can answer them. They're really good about getting back to people and helping people. And there's a YouTube about making applications. Non-technical questions, you get on to myself or Aoife or Steffi. And all of our contact details are listed on our website. Email is the best way to get in touch with us in this lovely pandemic. And that our website has all this information. And then just to also say, that if you've heard all this and thought, well, actually, I'm not really sure about the bursary, I'd rather look at the Agility Award, which has the same closing date. There's going to be a webinar on agility that my colleague Quiva is going to be giving on Tuesday of next week at 11, and there's registration is on our website. And that is it. So I'm going to stop sharing. Is that okay? I'll stop sharing and then I'll pull up the chat again, and you can tell me what I've missed. In terms of my question. Okay, so Lauren, I say you deduct income from project, your money you're asking for. How does that work in terms of you make missile on a publisher? Thanks. I'm not sure I understand the question.
Oh, yeah. Okay, if I did, sorry, I think that was quite unclear. So I saw that you, in your application, you deduct your any income that you would make from the outcome of the project from the amount that you're asking for. But how does that? Oh, am I mistaken? Is that not the case?
Yeah, not really, because it's not. The bursary isn't really outcome based, so you're not projecting your, you're not projecting your sales from a completed manuscript, which, with the best will in the world would be like, maybe you might see the fruits of that a year after this this ends. It's about the buying time bit. So if you have income of your own that you want to apply to, you want to include, so say you need a year of your life to work on this proposal, and that is going to cost you 25,000 euro. And so you say, my living costs for the 1 year are 25,000 euro, but I have 5,000 euro in savings. That would be your income, and I'm putting 5,000 euro against that, and then you would be requesting 20,000 euro. I will say the vast majority of people who apply for the bursary, or a lot of people who apply for the bursary, don't include income, and that is not a problem. So it's unlikely, aside from savings, that you will have income towards your living costs for this period of time. If it's about reducing your freelance work or taking a sabbatical or anything like that, it's unlikely you'll have income towards it. It's just about the time. So does that answer your question, Laura?
It does. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah. Oisin, is there still the same issue with some open document formats not being accepted, the application form? I mean, Aoife, I don't know if you can answer that, but it's like for Macs, there's a different, you have to use OpenOffice, don't you, Aoife, for if you have a Mac? You're on mute, Aoife, sorry.
Sorry, I'm just looking at it now. Yes, you have to have OpenOffice, but I can check that out, Oisin, and get back to you and see if any changes have been made.
I'll just bring this up because I know it caused a lot of people some problems. If anybody's in any doubt, the application form won't be accepted on the site if the format's wrong, and even with some versions of OpenOffice, it still doesn't work. So the application form really has to be saved on Microsoft Word as a Microsoft document, because some of the OpenOffice documents just aren't reliable. I use LibreOffice and it won't work, and some versions of OpenOffice that I've tried won't work. And this is, I guarantee, like, this is the complaint that comes up most often, like last minute when people try to upload it and find out it just won't go up.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I borrow my wife's laptop and do it on her Microsoft Word because I just don't take a chance.
Yeah, well, that's really helpful, Oisin, because I think, yeah, as you say, and now I mean, I'm loath to mention this because we thought it would be in the first part of this year, but we are in the process of an upgrade of the online system, which I don't know if many people on the call have much experience with it. When it was first rolled out, it was like very shiny and exciting, and I think now at this stage, it's less. It has lots of gremlins. So, but yeah, for Mac users, which is a lot of writers, I think. I think making the application form into a Word document is the easiest way to do that. And you can also, and I also think you can check, as I say, I will say the online support team, if you can back me up on this, are really good. If you give them enough notice.
Just give them plenty of time.
I think it's important that people realize that even if you download it and open up even once in another, like if I open it up in LibreOffice, I cannot use that form. It has to be opened up from the moment you download it, only in the right OpenOffice or Microsoft Word, because otherwise you base whatever it's corrupting the application format. And this is something that comes up. I just gave up trying to kind of find the right OpenOffice to do it. It just doesn't work, or you don't have the wrong one. So I literally borrow my wife's laptop with MS Word on it to do it. And once you fill out the form, it's really finicky in terms of trying to change anything. So if you open it up at all with the wrong OpenOffice, it just won't upload, even if you've saved it as an MS Word file.
It does give a link in the guidelines. Now, I don't know if that one, you know, to the OpenOffice writer software to use.
It was the same one, like it was an older version. You had to download an older version of OpenOffice than the one I had. So I had to use an older version of the software, and then I still had a problem with it. So the safest thing was simply to find somebody, if you don't use MS Word, find somebody who has and do the application form on that. Because I just found it was too many other problems. I found that the site otherwise works fine. It was just that particular thing was always throwing me.
Yeah. So no, yeah, I think thanks, Oisin, that's really helpful. So maybe people can queue up outside your wife's laptop as well as a possible solution.
Just to say, Sarah, that Markovich Awards you can't apply if you've been successful the previous year, so it's next gen and Markovich.
Sorry, that's right. Yeah, because they're both just two larger awards as well. Tia, do you have a question?
Yeah, sorry. It was only a suggestion in relation to what Oisin was saying about the application form, and it is obviously probably some way off, but something that the Arts Council could consider when multiple people in an organisation are working on the application form is if we can have an online account. So we deal with another funder at the moment where we can actually apply, go into our login to our account, and the application is there. And basically it saves it as you're typing it directly into your account. And it also means that you can save it and then someone else can actually go into it and change if necessary. It is possibly the simplest that we found in our organization when you have multiple people involved, because as Oisin says, the more complex the applications, the more difficult that process actually comes, particularly at the moment when you have some people working on laptops from home, some people working in the office, and you know it's just something for the Arts Council to think about.
Yeah, no, Tia, that's really helpful. And I think just to say the plan is that I think the reliance on the application form as an attachment is it will be a dynamic web form in future, and I think that functionality is allowable. But I've made a note of that too. That's really helpful. I might come back to you as well just to talk about it. But yeah, as I say, when this was introduced, over a decade ago, I think we were like best in class. But now we are like delinquent. I'm live on YouTube saying this, but anyway.
But I think it's also because everybody has different packages on their computers as well. And then you get the added layer, as Oisin was saying, for that. Yeah.
Does anyone have any other questions? You can probably just shout because I can only see a number of hands on the thing. And I think I've covered everything in the chat. If other people have more, just stunned people into silence with all my slides.
There, just one question that we get at Words Ireland sometimes is around the level of detail that people are required to kind of explain how they're going to spend the money. So, you know, should people be putting in a sort of budgeted, these are my creche costs, this is how much I earn per day, and this is how much time I'm taking off. So, you know, is a sentence or two enough to cover it, or what are you looking for there?
So as I tried to emphasize in the presentation, the emphasis in the bursary is really on buying time in your time, and you know, time is like a construct. So it's no, Brendan, we don't need to know people's mortgage details. We don't need to know people's crash costs. We don't, you know, and I think there's a kind of a I think just in terms of like the dignity of people applying and the kind of people's privacy as well. This is not, for better or for worse, this is not a means tested award, right? So we're not, this is funding for an idea, it's funding for your creative practice. And we are putting a level of faith in the artists applying that they that they will need this money for this particular period of time. People often, you know, people will tell us that, you know, that they need the funding to, you know, to afford you know, 2 days a week where their children are not, you know, visible, or that they need to kind of take this, or they tell us none of that and it's just the creative project. And I will say, and there are a couple of people on the call here who've been on panels before. I think I'm right in saying that by and large, the element of the proposal that that is most important is your CV, the work in progress, and that summary. It is the work. It is really not, it is not the budget, which may have one line in it, which may be Brendan McEvely, living costs 1 year, €20,000, and that would be it. There is, you know, this is not a project award like we have, you know, we use the same forms for things like putting on a theatre production, where like it would be reasonable to know what the per diems are for people, and you would want to know what the rentals are for this. And, you know, you might say, well, that's not feasible, or they're, you know, they're not charging enough in. This is just about a person. So we really don't need to know that. And it's not going to go against you if you're minimal on that kind of detail, because as I say, it is not means tested. It's about your idea and what you want to do with it. And so I think to just kind of reassure people on that is not the element of the proposal that gets the great deal of scrutiny. You know, we have a number of other awards, the Markovich and Next Generation are one of them, where there is no budget. You just put in that amount of money, you know, they're 25,000. And I have been advocating that is the case for the bursary, because that is actually how it functions in literature, but the bursary is different in other art forms and they need the budget. So yes, I hope that answers your question, Brent.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, but the most important element is the work and your idea, and being really clear about that, and why it's important to you as an artist. And it's not necessary to, you know, it's not necessary to divulge private information to a panel and to the Arts Council about that. You're applying for your idea. I often think, you know, like if Luke O'Neill was applying for a research grant for his idea, I don't think he would go into like huge detail about like what his mortgage is like, or what his like childcare costs or that. So I think there's something in us that thinks we need to like kind of demonstrate that, but it's not, we're not in that business. I hope that's reassuring anyway.
Yeah, no, I think people find that is reassuring, that it's based on the work, the quality of the work, and as someone once said to me, make it so good they can't say no. So yeah. I think that applies to the text and the idea, so that's great. Shall I kind of wrap it up there?
Yeah, unless anyone has any other questions.
Yeah, any other questions there?
Yeah. No, that's an hour of just me talking at you. So I hope it's been helpful, and I hope and really myself and Aoife are there if anyone has any questions. Yeah. So yes, artists can be insecure because money is such a confusing thing. You know, I think everyone can be very insecure about it. But yes, I think when asking for money, there's a kind of a sense that you need to prostrate yourself, and I just think it's not prostrate yourself. that's not the case. So thanks very much, Brendan.
No, not at all. Thank you for your time, and to Aoife Moynihan, and thanks to Aoife Murray for yet again the donation of their Zoom professional account, and then thanks everyone for attending. Just a reminder of the deadline date is the 3rd of February for both the awards we were talking about today, and yeah, there's the date for the Agility Award Information Clinic is, what was it, Sarah?
It's Tuesday of next week, so
Okay.
it's yeah, just 6 days away, and it's all on our
18th,
website as
yeah.
well if you want to register for that one as well.
Okay, so lovely stuff. Thanks for your time. And if anyone wants to share this, the full recording should be uploaded to our YouTube account, Words Ireland YouTube account tomorrow. So I'll share the link on kind of Twitter and Facebook. And if you want to share it on with other people, that would be great. Okay, so enjoy the rest of your morning and good luck with your applications, everyone. Thanks again, Sarah. Take care.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye. Thanks.